Joined for today's meeting. I welcome you all to this third edition of Inform meeting. Actually, technically second, but we had one meeting before we joined this name Inform. So last time we had some technical glitches. Some of the videos didn't play and all that. So this time we have taken enough care, and it should go nice. And we are starting in time. So we have two chairpersons and two speakers. So I'll just introduce the speakers, all the four of them, speakers and chairperson. And this chairperson can, introduce the topic and start the talks and lead the discussions. Yeah, Dr. Hemant Mehta is too well known to all the audience here. We can call him the catheter man or central vein man, because he has experience and answers for most problems in catheters. So he'll be chairing the first talk session. He's a senior nephrologist from Lilavati Hospital, and he was the first DM student of University of Mumbai, and he has been a teacher teaching DNB since 2005. And he's a fellow of ASDIN. It's called FA ASDIN. He's the first fellow. Actually, I met him and got close to him only during ASDIN meetings in US. And this Mumbai Nephrology Group, it's a very active nephrology group, and he's a treasurer, and he's a member of the International Committee of ASDIN. He has several publications, and he's presently the executive director of Avatar. Avatar, the premier interventional nephrology platform in our country. He has several publications, and he reviews national and international journals. And more importantly, he participates in several workshops all over the country. And he will be a great strength to not only this meeting and to this forum. Then we have a guest from US, Dr. Abhilash Koratala. I was, lucky when I heard from Sampath that why don't you reach Koratala, because he is familiar to some of you here through his talk on focus. He came in an ISN sponsored program, but I failed to see that, but I'll be seeing the recordings. So he's a very interesting person because he's a unique nephrologist and sonologist. See, Dale Arvind, me and Lex here, we are nephrologists, but sonology, we are not really trained. By experience, we try to do something and talk. But here we have Abhilash, who is a nephrologist and an expert in sonology. And more importantly, he is not a mere theoretician. He has a great capacity to reach people in social media, and he runs a NephroPocus. Focus, point of care ultrasound and nephrology tuned focus. So he runs a forum on that. He's very popular, and he's a son of the soil. He finished his MBBS in Andhra, Kakatiya Medical College, Warangal. Then he went to US for his internal medicine residency in Bronx Lebanon Hospital. Then University of Florida, he got into the fellowship in nephrology. Then he continued as a chief nephrology fellow. Then now he's, after finishing his ultrasonography, he has become an expert. And I told you the great thing is, he's not only good, he's able to communicate well and give us a lot of material for us to be motivated and to follow. And importantly, he's winner of the 2020 ASN Innovations in Kidney Education Contest, and also Nathan Hellman Social Media Project of the Year Award by NFJC. He has more than 140 scientific publications. So he is going to be with us today, and I hope to have him as a pillar for this forum, because I'm, I think, not young enough to do many more things. So let's see how, without taking his permission, I'm telling this that he's going to be with us for long. Yes. Then as speakers, we have Professor Kashi Vishweshwaran. He is a senior professor, and I shouldn't be, it will be audacious to introduce him. Because he noticeably he has been good from the beginning. He was gold medalist in his 1969 Medical College life, and he retired as professor of nephrology from Kottayam and later from Trivandrum Medical College, and he has trained plenty of students, DM students. It appears 15. That is because DM was started quite late in Kerala. Otherwise, there would be hundreds of students for him by now. And he got the Lifetime Achievement Award, API Kerala chapter, and the JCM Shastri Memorial Oration of Indian Society of Nephrology in Australia 2005. Presently, he is senior consultant at Anandapuri Hospital, Trivandrum. More than this, see, it is unusual for a senior professor like him to be interested in interventions and continue to practice that. That is what makes me made me very glad about him, and I was so intense that he should get involved in this meeting as early as the third meeting. So he's the topic, and many of the juniors would know him through his publications. I was also amazed when I could get the collection of books he has edited or written, and there may be more also. This is what I could get from the net. And for the juniors who have only seen his books, I think today they'll be seeing him on person. Then the star speaker will be today Dr. Vel Aravind. He is my junior. I like him so much because initially I used to be one of the rare species running around doing interventions, but then Vel Aravind entered, and we have become a great partners. And his passion for teaching is also, that is again a rare combination of ability to do something and willingness to share and the ability to communicate well. He finished his undergraduation from Tanjore Medical College, and his post-graduation training was in Ahmedabad Municipal Medical College. Then he continued in Ahmedabad under Professor Trivedi in Trivedi Institute of Transplant Sciences, and he is very much into transplant. And I should add here that he is good enough in surgical skills that he can do much part of the transplant also himself. And interventional nephrology, I think, and again, I have sort of I pulled him into this project, and let us see how we are able to sustain the interest in this forum. So from there, I hand over the meeting to the chairpersons. I'll unshare my slide. Yeah. So last time we had one announcement. Last time we had a talk on what is right for the left. That was left IJV catheter insertion, which was always thought to be a difficult one and a problematic one. So we tried to give you all some confidence, and we gave you some tips how to do it. I'm glad many people, even seniors like Sampath, and I don't know whether Sampath has joined. Sampath, are you there? Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. So I was so glad that when he called and said, Bala, I have tried this and I found it useful. And today Vel tells me that, it was a surprise that such a device was never utilized before. And, I was doubly happy that I brought this into the public notice. So if anybody else have tried also, maybe these two also will give some comments later. And so Professor Kashi would impress on us, it is not only putting in the catheter, but how to maintain it. Dr. Mehta, please you take over from him, and I'll, Dr. Hemant?
Yeah, I'm there. Hello. Yeah, Bala, thank you. Good evening. This is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kashi Viswasaran, though very senior to me, but we have been good friends and we exchange a lot of things whenever we meet over conference, etc.
Hemant, with your mask, you will have to be slightly louder.
Okay, because I'm in the hospital, so I better wear the mask.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to introduce Dr. Kashi Viswasaran as an ardent writer and par excellence speaker And rest of the things Bala has already introduced. So I would hand over to Dr. Kasi for his talk. So you'll have to allow him to share the slides.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bala. Thank you, Hemant. It's a pleasure to meet all of you and talk about our little experience in the extending the life of PermCAT. I think all the meetings of the Inform has been going on very well, and I'm sure that with the commitment of Bala and all the others, it will go on for well. Now I go to my topic. About PermCAT, the choice for hemodialysis will be AV fistula, there is no doubt about it. A good working AV fistula, as we all know, is a lifeline for hemodialysis. AV graft is something which we are not very comfortable with, and if the AV fistula is not possible or has failed, we go in for a PermCAT as the long-term vascular access. And we need to really decide what do you mean by really this long-term. Ours is a small unit. We do about 500, 600 dialysis per month. We have 12 machines, and the proportion of the fistula to PermCAT is nearly something like 32, total of 58 patients now with us. 32 are on AV fistula, 17 or so are on PermCAT, and about 8 or 9 short dialysis and acute cases and all on a temporary internal jugular catheter. We had been using the Medcom and the Quinton catheters earlier, but presently we are more comfortable with the palindrome catheter. We have not really used any of the heparin coated or the over-the-guidewire catheter so far. Since we are quite comfortable with the palindrome, we continue to use a palindrome. There are a lot of concerns when you are using a PermCAT. Luminal thrombosis, infection, underlabeled blood flow, one-way obstruction, biofilm formation, central venous stenosis, and cosmetic concerns are all important. Now, looking at the literature, I just could find the duration of catheter use. In most of the centers, PermCAT is used as a bridge to renal transplantation. Ours is not an active transplant center, and we use this as a access for lifelong dialysis. So going into the literature, we found that the catheter use has been 548 days maximum in some units. This is a report which I saw in 2005, one of the journals. So 548 days is just about less than 2 years. And a 10-year experience on 450 catheters, the catheter life was 86% at 1 year and 79% at 2 years. And the incidence of bacteremia was 0.58 per 1,000 catheter days. So these are the data that are available, some of the data that are available in the net. Now the question is, I asked the question, is PermCAT permanent? This question was posed to Dr. Google. And Dr. Google said, these tunnel catheters, I quote, these tunnel central venous catheters can be left in place as long as 1 year and provide permanent access to patients. However, despite being considered permanent, the longer they are in place, the greater the risk, and they will eventually become infected or dysfunctional. The catheter will last anywhere from 1 to 12 months, depending on its care. Freedom from infection is very important. How long can it be used? We have used catheters for more than 4 or 5 years. The life of the catheter really is as long as it is useful. So, or till it serves its purpose. The usual dictum that is followed in most of the nephrology units is that you use a femoral catheter or 48 hours maximum, temporary jugular catheter for 3 weeks, and permanent catheter for 6 to 12 months. We will try to address a few of the concerns one by one. One of the things that we follow in our unit, I said that our unit is a very small unit. We are not doing thousands of dialysis per month. It's a 2-staff team. For starting and closing, we have 2 staff. One is a sterile person and the other is a clean person who will, because what happens is that if it's a single technician, he will connect it and then handle the machine with his sterile glove. And normally what he does is he'll hold the finger like that and then press like that. The switches are there. So that means the glove gets infected and the chances of infection are very high. So there are a lot of chances for infection. Once the things are there, these are all basic steps, but we have to insist that they follow every step meticulously. When the catheter is exposed, you have to inspect the tunnel. You have to palpate the tunnel. You have to see the exit site. Then we have to take care while starting, closing, heparin and antibiotic lock, and the reuse of cap has to be prevented and the dressing has to be proper. These are the basic steps. If you follow these basic steps, the chances of infection are pretty low. These are the precautions that we insist that the technician does. Wiping the tunnel from inside out, palpating for collections, post-procedure. Soon after putting the catheter, you just milk it so that any tissue debris or anything that is milked out. It is to be milked outside. Most important thing is that there should be no pull or tug on the catheter. Exit site has to be again wiped inside out using chlorhexidine, and there has to be no pull tug on the catheter. See, what happens is when they put plaster on the catheter or dressing and the plaster, when they pull the plaster out, what happens is the catheter gets automatically pulled. And the exit site has to be exactly enough for the catheter to go. It has to be maintained clean and dry, and antibiotic dressings we give only if it is necessary. We don't routinely put an antibiotic over the exit site and then cover it. There should be the hub of this catheter has to be exactly fitting into the exit site. There should be no pull out of the catheter, which can happen when they are handled in a improper way. What we do is, we don't reuse the cap. You have the 2 limbs and the caps are there. Once the cap is removed, it is discarded, and we don't reuse the caps. We don't have the original caps, but the idea that we have is, the suggestion that we have is, the AV fistula needle comes with a cap. It is a lower lock cap, slightly smaller than the other one. And AV fistula needle, we don't use the cap at all. You remove the cap and then place it out. You don't use it at all. So as soon as an AV fistula needle is taken out, you remove the cap, put it in a pouch and send it for ETO, re-sterilization. It is not used. It has not been handled at all, except that it has been removed from that sterile pack, send it back for ETO. And that is a cap that is used for PermCath this thing every time. So every time you use a new cap and then throw it off, next time you have another ETO sterilized new cap. So that is how we use that cap. It is not difficult because there are n number of patients who are on AV fistula, and you can easily take that cap and give it for ETO sterilization. We have also tried, there have been some patients who came from abroad for short vacation to Kerala, and we had to keep them on dialysis for a few weeks till they return. And most of these people, they prefer not to have a dressing. So we also got bold enough not to give dressing to a few reliable patients who will keep it clean. And we have succeeded, except one patient who went in for sepsis after some time. The next thing I want to talk about is the fixing the catheter wings. Initially, once you have put the catheter in, you need to fix it to the skin. because till the cuff is impregnated into the surrounding tissue and fixed, the catheter can always come out. And I have put three sutures here. If the suture is like this, you have this skin bite here and you are suturing like this, then the chances are that the catheter will come out. If the suture is here and then pull the catheter back in this direction, then the catheter will not come out. This is also an acceptable method. So we would prefer to have a suture starting from here, pulling the catheter back into the body so that the catheter expulsion doesn't occur. We expect to get a flow of 450 ml per minute on catheter, but we don't, because most of our patients do not tolerate this amount of flow. And so we insist on a minimum of 300 ml per minute for all our patients. And if the flow is less than 250 ml per minute, we say that the flow is not adequate. And poor or no flow, it can be due to one-way obstruction. It can be due to kink in the catheter. We don't prefer to use the pre-curved catheters because the correct position at the time of surgery may be slightly difficult and the catheter may get twisted. Therefore, we don't prefer to use the pre-curved catheters. And then if the tip position, if that is the wall of the atrium, and if the tip position is like this, the chances of suction are there, and therefore it is not preferred. So you have to position the catheter in such a way that it is facing in this direction. TPA is very expensive, but we may be able to manage with TPA for minor clots. Major clots are not dissolved by TPA. The other thing is the clot between the tip terminal hole and the side hole. We know that the catheter has got a terminal hole and a hole little proximal to that on the side. Now, if your heparin lock is not proper, then there is a chance for some blood to travel between this terminal hole to the side hole, and that terminal part of the catheter will be having blood and not your heparin saline. Sorry. So that is something to be prevented. The clot between the tip and the terminal hole has to be prevented. It is due to the defective heparinization which the technician does. And I'll come to this particular point a little later. We have to maintain the hemoglobin less than 12. We have burned our fingers by unnecessarily or unknowingly letting the hemoglobin and not noticing the fact that the hemoglobin had crossed 14 and continued like that inadvertently, and then the catheters could start getting problems. The biofilm is the most important problem. Both it can occur in the lumen as well as in the pericatheter area. So these are the concerns that we have in a catheter, and some other concerns we have to discuss and tackle. These are the dressings that we usually have. This dressing is a Tagaderm dressing. The Tagaderm is little expensive. Mepo dressing, the advantage or disadvantage of the Mepo dressing I'll discuss shortly. This is something that we found very useful. This is a watertight, small dressing, very thin watertight dressing where the patient can comfortably take bath. That is one of the major problems on a perm cath person. I am not able to take bath. So this is a totally watertight dressing which we have used. This is the difference between comparison between the two dressings. This is your Tagaderm dressing, which is expensive. It is sterile. It is available in various lengths. It is opaque. It is not waterproof. That is the most important thing. And the adhesive is not very strong. The chances are that sometimes the patient comes back, it is exposed at some places, and it is available as a single piece. Whereas your other dressing is very thin, it is transparent, it is not sterile, and it is available as a roll. So every patient buys one dressing for 10 meters, which will go on for nearly 50 sessions of dialysis. if you take about 8 or 9 inches, you can alter the length as you please, and then you can stick it on. And with this, the patient can take bath. That is the most important advantage of this particular dressing. Now, the procedure, this is the chlorhexidine soaked gauze piece that is here. And once the patient is connected, you cover that and then cover that with a towel. This, I have just brought it here to explain the heparinization. At the end of dialysis, when you heparinize, there has to be a coordination between the injection and the clamping. Just as your priming volume is injected, immediately it has to be clamped. Otherwise, the blood will come between the tip and the side hole, which means that the chances of clotting are there because the heparin has not reached the tip of the catheter, and tip clotting can occur. This is not the regular cap of this. This is not the regular cap of the perm cat. This is the cap of the fistula needle, which is used fresh every time. Now, I just share some of our data. I can't see my slides fully because that pictures are coming. I'm just going to my lower. Yeah, I'll come back to the full screen later. Our data actually till from 2008 on, our hospital started in 2008 only. Our dialysis room is just about 13 years, 14 years old. Initially, we were using Medcom and Mahurkar catheters, but after 2015, we have been regularly using palindrome catheters only. I have just got about 50 cases of perm cath insertion analyzed. The male-female ratio is something like 34:14, which is approximately the same as the ratio of the dialysis patients. The age is less than 50 years, 8 cases, 51 to 60, 13, 61 to 69 is 16, and very old people, 71 and more than 80, 7 and 6 each. Out of this, 10 persons went directly to perm cath. 20 persons had IJV for starting dialysis and then went on to perm cath. In 9 patients, AV fistula failure transferred to perm cath. In 5 patients, it was 3 IJV, AV fistula failure, and then perm cath. And then there were problem cases with multiple accesses and access failures. So I will share with you the functioning. Less than 6 months function. Out of 9 cases where the catheter was stopped, could not function after 6 months, 4 are right now with us on dialysis. 2 patients had a transfer to other institutions, and 4 patients were dead, but with a working perm cath. One of the cases, a very recent case, that is also included in this number. Between 6 and 12 months, we had 6 patients where the catheter was used for 6 months, 1 for hemodialysis, 3 are on hemodialysis. 1 of them has been taken for transplant, and more than 48 months, we had out of 6 patients, 3 are on hemodialysis with us, and 3 have died over the last so many years after maintaining them on perm cath for 48 months. I don't know if that number is good enough. I would like to get the opinion of other people about the longevity of the perm cath. Our maximum longevity was 5 years. Now I will just explain, or I will just give our experience on 6 unique cases where we had perm cath. The first case is a case which I personally presented the case in one of the meetings of the Nephrology Association of Kerala. This was a case where we had done a temporary subclavian catheter as an emergency. The subclavian catheter was done by the cardiologist. because the patient came at midnight with a cardiac problem, pulmonary edema, and we had to dialyze him as an emergency. And that catheter was maintained for 19 months without any major issues. In between, we tried to do an AV fistula, but the fistula failed. And then when we wanted him to go into a perm cath, after 3 months, he said, nothing doing, I will continue with this only. It went on like that for 19 months till the hub broke. And there was a little leak of blood to the hub. So there was no way by which we could continue the dialysis. We had to convince him. And then through the same site, we did the ultrasound. The subclavian vein was okay. There was no swelling at the arm. The vein was okay. And then we did the same through the same site. We did a perm cath, which remained for 18 months functioning. By the time the patient got, financially quite unstable, and he just opted to drop off dialysis. But even at that time, the catheter was functioning. So that is 18 months. The second case had a number of problems. In 2014, she had a temporary right IJV catheter. With that, we did about 50 sessions. And then we went for a perm cath. And with that, we did about 80 sessions of hemodialysis. The hub of the perm cath got broken. I don't know how it gets broken. It was a mid-com. Then we did a left jugular perm cath on that patient in 2016. And then that also went on for about 50 sessions without a problem. Then it developed thrombus. We tried streptokinase. We tried repositioning the catheter, but nothing worked. And then we had to take it out. And then again, we put a temporary right jugular line and dilated for a few days. By the time the patient herself pulled it out. We didn't have a long perm cath sufficient length. We did a right femoral perm cath and then took the exit site to the anterior abdominal wall. And she had 111 sessions of dialysis. And then she died after a total of about 300 sessions of dialysis. That's way back in 2014, 2016 time period. So that is one problem case that we had. Ultimately, we could give her about 1 year of good, reasonable quality of life with a femoral perm cath, which was just ending at the high in the common iliac. It had not even reached the IVC. The third case is an 85-year-old man who was on a 85-year-old man who was on a AV fistula for about 18 months. The fistula failed. We didn't have intervention at that point of time. We changed him over to perm cath, and then he had another 32 months of dialysis on this perm cath. The fourth case is an 83-year-old lady who had right mastectomy. And then we had a right jugular catheter that was removed, and then we had the same line through the guide wire. We could manage to put the perm cath, but the exit was a problem because the right side, the breast was removed, and post radiation, the skin was so thin and scarred. There was nothing on the right side. So we took the exit side to the left side. I will show you the picture. Another patient is a patient from Gulf. I'd been seeing him for a long time. And once when he came, his creatinine had come up to, he used to come every 6 months. So once when he came, his creatinine had come to 6.5. So we told him to get an AV fistula done. He got an AV fistula. And then the creatinine was stabilized around 4.5. He used to come every 6 months. And creatinine remained in that range. He completed his tenure in Gulf, came back to India, and within 1 year, the creatinine gone to 88.5, and then we had to start him on dialysis. The fistula was still working. We used that same fistula for about 7 years. After that, the fistula failed. Then we put a perm cath, and then he had a total of more than 1,700 and odd dialysis from 2007 or 8. Out of this, 1,000 sessions were on the AV fistula and 750 sessions were on a perm cath. And the last case I want to tell you about is a 65-year-old lady I think I have talked about this case with Bala and Sambat a few months back, almost near back really. Her access history is actually an access failure history. It is not an access success history. She had a right IJB catheter in July 2019, which was promptly changed to jugular perm cath, same site, perm cath, August 19, developed thrombosis, failed thrombolysis, changed over to left side, again thrombosis, AVF had failed, and we put a femoral perm cath, short length femoral perm cath because we didn't have the long catheter, 18 centimeter, and then exited to the thigh. We didn't bring it to the anterior abdominal wall because we wanted the tip of the perm cath to be somewhere near the IVC. So we had the exit site on the thigh. And the cuff was very close to the entry into the vein. And that also got thrombosed. So she had right jugular thrombosis, left jugular thrombosis. Her face had swollen up, the neck was swollen up, and we had done a CT venogram, contrast CT venogram with a temporary right jugular in place. And then that showed only the right femoral vein was suitable. We managed to put the catheter, long catheter, into the femoral vein, took through the exit side to the anterior abdominal wall, and with that she is now on dialysis for the last nearly 1 year. So this is the last case that I want to share with you, and I will share a few X-rays. This is the case number 6 I had talked about with the femoral perm cath with the exit site and the anterior abdominal wall. She had a failed CAPD catheter because of multiple adhesions following her abdominal surgery. It was not successful. So all the accesses that were tried were unsuccessful. The frame on the left shows the perm cath on the right jugular with the exit site on the left side, left mammary region. And that is exit site on the left mammary region because she had no subcutaneous tissue on the right side following mastectomy and radiation. The right side picture shows a beautiful double curvature of the perm cath on a left-sided perm cath. Now, lastly, this is the issue that we had last week. My resident sent me this X-ray. Very critically ill patient in the ICU having a right-sided line for your triple lumen catheter and ICU monitoring. So the resident decided to put a left line, left jugular perm cath, left jugular temporary catheter, and the catheter has been placed like this. Now, going into that, we need to know the anatomy. Since Bala told me about the left perm cath, this is one problem that you can have with the left perm cath. My resident told me that this is a left-sided IVC. It is not left-sided IVC because the right-sided IVC is already there, and there is already a catheter on the right-sided IVC. So it's not a left-sided IVC. This, if you just see the anatomy of the SIGO system on that in the body, we are concentrating on this portion, and that is what I have expanded here. That is your left subclavian, left internal jugular, and that is your right side, and this is the innominate vein. Now this catheter has actually gone from the jugular straight into this, and it has gone to the superior intercostal vein. The superior intercostal vein has got a communication, a rudimentary communication with the coronary sinus. So if this catheter was working properly, this has to be removed. The catheter was working properly, it means that there has been a communication between this left superior intercostal vein and the coronary sinus with which it connects. That is how this catheter works. Otherwise, this catheter will not work and give a blood flow rate of nearly 200-250 ml per minute. That is a picture of the coronary sinus. This is the coronary sinus, and this rudimentary structure is the one that connects with the left superior intercostal vein. That is the anatomical portion of this So just to summarize the points, the catheter placement and fixing are very important for the long-term catheter. Day-to-day care by the patient. We have a two-staff team for operation. That is, for starting dialysis and closing dialysis, there will be two people. And then the technician and the nurse who are doing this, they have to be trained particularly for the dressing, palpating the tunnel, cleaning the exit site, and every step in the dialysis. And this is something that we have been following, and the rate of infection and bacteremia have come down significantly. It is my personal obsession because we are a small unit. We have only about 30-35 dialysis per day. And the technician or the staff nurse has to report all cases to me every day. Every case on dialysis has to be reported to me, even if I'm on leave. If I'm in the hospital, I will be able to see the two shifts of patients, morning shift and afternoon shift, I'll be able to see, but the evening shift, they have to report to me. There, they have to mention about the access and the blood flow rate and the events that occur in the dialysis. So vigilant monitoring is very important for maintaining the longevity of the catheter. And the excuse that ours is a very busy unit, we are doing 100 dialysis per day, is not for diluting standards. We don't accept an excuse of a very busy unit, that is why we are not able to get a long life for the catheter, is not an acceptable thing. So this is what I wanted to share with you. I want to thank Dr. Bala and the whole team for giving me to include me in this group and giving me an opportunity to share my views, which I thought may be useful. I do not know how many of you really have reused the caps. Thank you, Hemant. Over to you.
Thank you, Kasi, for an excellent talk as usual. May I make some points and about the cap which you started with? So first, let us understand that when the last guidelines came in 2006 about vascular access, the first focus was on fistula first. But the latest guidelines which came in 2020 or so, focus is more on plan, P-L-A-N. P for patient, L for life plan first, then A for access, N for needs. So we have to keep patients' choices in mind and just not rush into AV fistula for everybody. And in that context, our tunnel dialysis catheter become very important in today's world. Having said that, let me tell you that hello. When palindrome was introduced in India, the first 2 samples came to me. And thereafter, we did first 75 cases and published our data where the median survival was 339 days. And that was a changeover from using a step tip catheter to a symmetrical tip catheter. Why I'm saying is that because a symmetrical tip catheter would lie all along within the right atrium, chances of formation of thrombus at the point of tip is less than a step tip catheter, and many a times that thrombus is the beginning of initiation of catheter related bloodstream infection. So that's second point. As far as caps are concerned, 3M had come to me with what they call as Curos cap, C-U-R-O-S. So when we tried it, this palindrome catheters, if you look carefully, have 3 threads, and Curos cap had only 2 threads. So if you put, it's a antibiotic impregnated disposable cap. So if you put it on the catheter, 1 thread will remain exposed, and that could act as a source of infection because over 48 hours, some dirt will accumulate over there. So I was wondering what is being done, because they said it is being used in USA. So I communicated with Professor Timothy Clark. Timothy Clark is the person responsible for designing of vector, Arrow's vector double Lubin symmetrical tip catheter. So he said that they use what is called as Tego caps, and Tego caps are then attached to Kuros caps. He doesn't know whether it is useful or not, but what he wrote to me was that because of that, their unit, dialysis unit, got 5-star rating because of least number of infections. By the way, Timothy Clark is an interventional radiologist, but takes active interest in dialysis and all. And there was a nearby unit which was using Tego Kuros cap combination, but not using vector flow as a dialysis catheter, versus their unit, and those who were not using vector flow had 3 times the risk of infection. Subsequent to that, 2018, Jason published an article sponsored probably by Davita, where they used ClearGuard caps, and that was found to be superior to Tego Kuros cap. So this is something we must all have knowledge about, that yes, if you want to use disposable caps, there are options available. Of course, cost will go up, but it could be something useful, and if you can prevent one infection, so that a lot of money can be saved subsequently. So having said that, Bala, how are we going about second talk, or some question answers at this point? Bala?
Yeah. Hemant, we'll finish off 2 questions in the chat box before moving on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Rajagopal, can you read it, sir? Or should I read it? How many times have you used streptokinase or urokinase for POMCAT patency in a single patient? Was there a problem of antibody development against these enzymes and ineffectiveness of reuse?
Basically, it is not safe to use streptokinase or urokinase repeatedly. Therefore, we have used it only one time. TPA is very expensive. So that is why we have used TPA only in a very limited number of patients. But streptokinase you can use only once. If you use it the second time, the chances of anaphylaxis and the antibody-mediated reactions are very, very high. So we don't use streptokinase repeatedly.
Yes,
It can be reused repeatedly, but the problem is the cost.
Hemant,
Yeah, Bala, see, I'll tell you something. See, first we have to address to the basic problem, why is this catheter not working properly? And we have to be reasonably sure that you are dealing with an intraluminal problem rather than extraluminal problem. And when we say extraluminal problem, it could be a fibrin sheath, it could be a clot which is formed outside on the surface of the catheter, which may or may not be communicating right from the catheter tip all the way up to the lateral wall of right atrium. Now, if that is a situation, no amount of your thrombolysis is going to work. Only and only when we have this problem of intraluminal catheter, that this has been found to be useful. So we have now, me and Dr. Vacharajani are in the process of writing a paper where we have 17 patients of catheter-related atrial thrombus, where we have used RTPA, and I will let you know the results when the paper is out. But we have had quite a good success. But those are typical intraluminal or the tip-related thrombi. However, if you're dealing with fibrin sheath, no amount of thrombolysis is going to work. Now, how do we differentiate that? A fibrin sheath will work like a one-way valve. So your inflow will be smooth, outflow will be a problem. A catheter-related atrial thrombus may allow your catheter to function properly, because many times the clot is hanging with a thin thread from the tip of the catheter and dangling like a pendulum into the right atrium, where you are always scared that this might get dislodged and lead to massive pulmonary thromboembolism. So if there is no inflow problem but outflow problem, suspect fibrin sheath, plan for a catheter exchange, keeping your balloons ready so that you can do balloon disruption of fibrin sheath, and then put in a new catheter. Just to give you an example, last Saturday, Dr. Almeida from Hinduja referred one patient, elderly lady, less than average height, very frail, failed transplant because of BK virus nephropathy, no vascular access, clotted graft in the left arm, right-sided fistulas failed. The IR has put a 20 centimeter non-cuffed catheter, which is working, 20 centimeter in a short female, almost touching the base of the right atrium, entering into the IVC. And with a note that whenever he tried to put a tunneled catheter, pump cath, into the same position, there is no flow, but this catheter is giving the flow. So what was the problem? The problem was there was a nice big fibrin sheath over there. We disrupted the sheath. There was also a right cavoatrial junction stenosis. So everything was dilated, and then a regular tunnel cuff catheter was inserted. So always suspect whenever there is a problem that somewhere there is a flow, somewhere there is no flow, inflow is there, but outflow is not there. Fibrin sheath is, and that could be another source of subsequent infection.
Hemant, when you say
Yes.
inflow and outflow, you please explain,
So when you push the blood or saline in, it goes very smooth, no problem. But you try to suck, maybe it comes on the syringe, but when you put it on the machine, maybe 50, 60, less than 100 flow, something like that.
Yes. Sampath and anybody wants to add about this?
One more thing I just forgot to mention is in one of the complicated cases that we had talked about, the PCV had gone up very high. Hemoglobin had inadvertently on erythropoietin that had gone up to 17, and that resulted in the thrombosis of all these conditions. Now this patient is on, we are maintaining the hemoglobin at 12 and then giving her anticoagulation. That is how this femoral, long femoral catheter is now at present working. Somebody has raised a hand. Dr. Subramaniam has raised his hand. I don't know whether he wants to talk.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. With a lot of respects and greetings to you, sir, and all the seniors, sir. I just want to share one or two things which I suffered in my patients. Regarding to that difficult situation cases you presented, so some 6 patients you presented. In that one patient, what you told us, since the hub got broken, you have to change the catheter, and you told. And I have, when I asked that he gave me a
Subramanian, there is echo from your
Voice is
mic.
broken.
Yeah, your voice is broken.
And now, is it clear, sir? Is it clear now?
It's okay. Carry on. Try, or you put it in the chat. Then we'll ask.
Now is it clear?
Yes. Yeah. Carry on. Make it short. Yeah.
That the hub, what we can do is we can cut that tip of the catheter, including the hub, and we can take a new hub from used leftover catheter, and you can insert it into that plastic portion of the end tip of that plastic transparent end of the catheter where you cut it. So you can take, instead of changing a perm cath itself, this thing will be helpful to us, and it will be very easy for us to prolong the life of the catheter. It will make the situation easy. Another thing, sir, urokinase is available as 5,000 units vial, which cost around 250 rupees only, sir. So 250 to 300 rupees only. So that you can easily try. You can dilute it to 2 ml and just push it on 2 sides, and it definitely helps in many situations, sir. That is what I felt.
But Subbu, that dilution, I don't think it will work. I think we'll have a separate session once on, for this. Yes, Hemant, you can give your finishing comments and we'll go on.
No. See what he says. This Uvreg 5K is the brand name. Yeah, it works many a times when the heparin is not found to be adequately maintaining the patency. So we have tried this urokinase 5K locking of the catheter. and somehow the flow improves. These are, the last ditch efforts to salvage the catheter before the patient has to spend on a new catheter. So this has worked many times. So it can be tried before you decide that, okay, this is due to fibrin sheath and this is not going to work at all. So that, and one last comment, Bala, though Dr. Kasi had a subclavian catheter for 19 months put by cardiologist and all, we had one patient where we had again a subclavian catheter that subclavian vein got stenosed. Patient had a swollen hand. We had put a stand. Subsequently, patient had a fistula, had undergone a cadaver transplant. After 10 years, he came with extremely swollen hand. In fact, this was presented as a poster in American Society of Nephrology, titled as "Have you seen this hand?" So it was such a bad hand that he could not lift. I mean, if you correlate it with Hindi film dialogue, it was really a 2.5 kilo ka haath. So what we found was that the stent in the subclavian vein had got fractured. Subsequently, we required another angioplasty, stent in stent, for the hand to settle down. So this can happen. This happened after several years, when patient was not even using the fistula. So keep this in mind. We should, in today's world, I mean, very, very last resort, if pushed against the wall, no other access, consider subclavian. Otherwise, please avoid subclavian vein catheters.
Oh, Hemant, this subclavian catheter was put long back. Not
Yes.
Yeah,
Same. Mine was also like 2000.
Yeah. The point is that, see, once a catheter is working, and then you tell them to go in for a next procedure, the patients are not willing to go, because this is working, doctor, will continue like this. That is a difficulty.
Yeah, but sir, if you go by the guidelines, I mean,
guidelines we all accept. The guidelines are there. Subclavian is not the preferred access, but having put an access in the subclavian and it is working, the patient is refusing to go in for any other alternative.
That's a problem even with IJV also, sir. That is a problem with internal jugular vein catheters also.
Yeah, that is true. That is why we have. But my point is that if you take care of that, the technicians are better trained and they are sort of supervised more, then the chances are that we are able to continue this without major complications.
No, sir. See, that's because the tip is stiff. You are very likely to develop central venous stenosis, especially of the right brachiocephalic vein, which we have seen now more than say 50 cases. Right brachiocephalic vein thrombosis because of right IJV temporary catheter, either one catheter kept for a long time or repeated catheters. That's the precaution one has to take, and that's why supposedly the softer tip and the material, the carbothin material of tunneled cuff catheter would probably prevent this sort of thrombosis of the right brachiocephalic vein. That's the point. So recommendation is not to keep it for more than 15 days. If you look at the KDOP guidelines.
Hemant, I think we'll go on. But I think Dr. Kashi gave the history that this patient had such a long subclavian life. That's all. It was not his plan, I think. So I think you can, because the other talk also is going to take a long time. So I think this will require more discussions on catheters more and more often in there. So yes, Hemant. So if you can